Kellan Wade hadn't slept in 2 days, and his 6-year-old son was using a cardboard box as a spaceship in the lobby of a 5-star hotel. Pax, buddy, careful with that. Kellan reached out just in time to stop the box from crashing into a marble vase that probably cost more than his car. He let out a sigh, rubbing his eyes as he crouched down. Can you keep it quiet for 10 minutes? Daddy just needs to finish this shift. But you said we were going to go to the park, Pax whispered, scowling. I know, I'm sorry. I didn't think Jerry would call me in tonight, but he needed someone for the VIP suite. I'll make it up to you, okay? Pancakes and triple syrup tomorrow, promise. Pax pouted but nodded. Kellan kissed the top of his head and stood up just as the elevator dinged. The general manager waved him over. Wade, VIP suite. She's arriving in 3 minutes. You're assigned personally. Me, Kellan blinked. Why me? You're good with people, and she's important. Don't screw it up. Kellan barely had time to smooth his wrinkled uniform shirt before the glass doors opened. She walked in like she owned the place. Tall, confident. Dressed in a black fitted coat with sharp shoulders, her heels clicked against marble like a metronome of power. Sleek brown hair pulled into a low bun, dark eyes scanning the lobby like she was already bored with it. Kellan stepped forward. Welcome to the Kingsley, ma'am. I'm Kellan. I've been assigned to assist you during your stay. She glanced at him briefly, then at Pax, who was now hiding behind the reception desk. Is he yours? Yes, ma'am. Kellan cleared his throat. Just for a bit. His babysitter canceled last minute. The woman studied him for a second longer, then said, I'm Kalina Zeller. He waited for more. None came, no title, no explanation, just a name. She looked down at her phone and started walking toward the elevators. Are you coming? Kellan snapped out of it and hurried after her, grabbing her suitcase. Yes, absolutely, right this way. In the elevator, silence stretched between them. Kalina didn't make small talk. She scrolled through something on her phone, only glancing up when Pax softly tugged on Kellan's pant leg. Daddy, can I press the button? Kellan looked at Kalina. She didn't object. He nodded. Pax reached up and pressed the top floor. I didn't know kids were allowed on shift, Kalina said suddenly. They're not. It's not ideal. I'm just trying to make ends meet. Kellan kept his eyes ahead. I pick up every shift I can. I'm on the wait list for daycare vouchers. Kalina said nothing, but Kellan saw the way her eyes flicked toward him again, more curious now. The penthouse doors opened. Kellan wheeled the suitcase inside, flipping on the lights. If you need anything, I'll be just downstairs for the next few hours. Room service is 24 hours, and do you always work this late with your son? She interrupted, stepping inside. Only when I have no choice. She nodded once, then turned away. Kellan took that as his cue to leave, but 2 hours later she called down. He answered on the first ring. Miss Zeller, I need a dinner table set, she said. For 2, Kellan blinked. For 2, bring the boy, he looks hungry. The penthouse dining room looked like a page ripped out of a luxury magazine, candles, silverware that gleamed. A view of the skyline that made Kellan's stomach twist with the kind of awe he hadn't let himself feel in years. Kalina sat at the head of the table, wine glass in hand. She gestured for Kellan and Pax to sit. I had them make grilled cheese for him, no crust. And tomato soup. Kellan's voice caught. You didn't have to, I didn't ask what I had to do. Her eyes flicked to Pax. Let him eat. Pax beamed and climbed into the chair. This is the fanciest dinner I've ever had. Kellan sat slowly. Thank you really, Kalina shrugged. It's just food. No, it's more than that, Kellan said quietly. You didn't have to be kind. Kalina broke a piece of bread and buttered it. Kindness is underrated. They ate mostly in silence, but not the uncomfortable kind. Kellan found himself watching her when she wasn't looking, how focused she was, how she barely touched her wine, how she asked Pax about school with genuine interest. After dessert, she stood. I have meetings all day tomorrow, but I'll need a car and you with it. I'm not a driver, Kellan said. I'm just hotel staff. I'll request you, he blinked. Why? Kalina tilted her head. Because you didn't ask for anything, and you treat people like they matter. The next morning, Kellan was waiting outside the penthouse, dressed in a pressed blazer the hotel lent him for the day. Pax had gone with Mrs. Halley, the retired neighbor who babysat occasionally. He couldn't risk bringing him again. Kalina stepped out in a navy blue pantsuit this time, hair down in waves, sunglasses shielding her eyes. "You look like a bodyguard," she said as she passed him. "I was going for chauffeur, but I'll take that," she cracked half a smile. "Let's go." The day passed in a blur of meetings. Kellan opened doors, took calls, fetched coffee. Kalina didn't introduce him to anyone, but she made sure he had a lunch plate wherever she sat. By evening, they were back in the car, the city lights blurred past the windows. "Thank you for today," she said suddenly. "You don't have to thank me, it's my job." "No," Kalina said, looking directly at him. "I mean it. I don't usually have people who feel real around me." That surprised him. "You don't seem like someone who'd have trouble with that." She laughed once short. "You'd be surprised." Kellan hesitated. "What do you do exactly?" Kalina paused, then said, "I'm the CEO of ZellerCorp." He nearly missed the turn. "Wait. The ZellerCorp? Yep, wow, that's huge. You run a billion-dollar company." Kalina glanced at him. "Still think grilled cheese was too generous?" Kellan looked at her, really looked. "No, I think it makes sense now," she smiled, and something in Kellan's chest shifted. That night, he tucked Pax into bed and stared at the ceiling for hours. He couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she looked at him like he wasn't just another guy in a uniform. The way she smiled when she thought he wasn't watching. She was a billionaire CEO. And he was a struggling dad, barely keeping it together. But when she looked at him, it didn't feel impossible. The first snowfall of the season came 2 days later, blanketing the city in a quiet hush that muffled car horns and softened the edges of the skyline. Kellan was adjusting his tie in the hotel locker room when the desk radio crackled. Kalina had requested him again. He found her waiting in the private lounge, her coat draped over one arm, a leather portfolio in the other. She didn't look up immediately, just closed the folder and said, "I have a function tonight. I need someone who knows how to be discreet." "I'm not exactly a tuxedo guy," Kellan said as he approached. "You are tonight," she replied, handing him a garment bag. "Your measurements are on file now." His eyebrows lifted. "You asked for my measurements. I observe things," Kalina said, already turning toward the hallway. "You'll escort me inside, stay nearby, and make sure no one from the board corners me for too long." "I'm not in the mood to be schmoozed." The gala was hosted in a glass-encased ballroom near the waterfront. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across a sea of diamonds, tuxedos, and champagne flutes. Kellan stood frozen for a moment just inside the entrance, taking in the surreal contrast between this world and the one he knew, the one filled with overdue bills and second-hand furniture. Kalina stepped beside him, her dress an elegant midnight blue that shimmered when she moved. "You clean up well," she commented, her gaze trailing down his lapels. "Try not to look like you're bracing for impact." "I'm just trying not to knock over anything worth more than my rent," he muttered. She didn't laugh, but there was a flicker of something close. "I'll handle the talking. You keep them from getting too close." They navigated the room like a tide, Kalina gliding seamlessly from conversation to conversation, while Kellan lingered just behind her, intercepting drinks pushed toward her, stepping in when someone lingered too long. He noticed how often her smile didn't reach her eyes, how she stiffened when a man with a thick mustache leaned too far into her space. "You all right?" Kellan asked quietly once the man moved on. Kalina's eyes flicked sideways. "He's on the board. Thinks he's entitled to my time because he once chaired a committee. You want me to make something up? Emergency call, sudden fire." She paused. "You'd lie for me." "I'd protect you," Kellan said simply. She didn't reply, but her expression changed just slightly. Like a wall had shifted an inch. They made it through the rest of the evening without incident, though by the time they stepped back into the limo, Kellan's feet ached and he'd been offered 4 investor cards, none of which he accepted. Kalina leaned back against the seat, tugging off her earrings. "You're better at this than half the security staff I've paid triple for. I used to work night shifts at a downtown bar. You learn how to read people fast when elbows turn to fists." She turned her head. "Is that where you met his mother?" Kellan blinked. "Pax's mom? No, we were together in college. She passed when he was 3. Kalina's posture shifted subtly. "I didn't know. You weren't supposed to." He adjusted the cuff of his sleeve. "I try not to lead with the tragic backstory." "You're not tragic," she said after a moment. "You're surviving." He didn't know what to say to that. The car pulled up to the hotel entrance and Kellan moved to open the door. "Come up," she said suddenly. "There's something I want to show you." Inside the penthouse, she walked past the dining room and into a small study he hadn't seen before. She opened a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope, holding it out to him. Kellan took it, confused. "What is this?" "An offer," she said. "I need a new personal aide, someone I trust, someone who doesn't treat me like a headline." He opened the envelope. The number on the contract made his heart stutter. I mean, this is more than I make in a year." "I know," Kalina said. "That's what you're worth." He stared at her. "Why me?" She looked directly at him. "Because you don't want anything from me." Kellan hesitated. "What if I say no?" Her expression didn't change. "Then I'll hire someone else, but it won't be the same." He didn't answer right away. His mind raced Pax's school, the cracked radiator in their apartment, the nights he lay awake wondering how many shifts he could take before something gave out. "I need a day to think," he said quietly. Kalina nodded. "That's fair." She walked him to the elevator, her heels silent against the floor. As the doors closed between them, Kellan realized the strangest part wasn't the number on the contract. It was that she'd asked, not demanded, not insisted, she'd offered. The next day, he sat on the floor with Pax, building a crooked Lego tower. He watched his son's face light up when it didn't fall, and for the first time in a long time, something shifted in his chest. Not fear, possibility. He picked up the hotel phone and asked to be connected to Kalina's suite. When she answered, he said only one thing: "I'm in, but I have a condition." "What is it?" "I don't work for you, I work with you." There was a pause. Noted. And just like that, the ground beneath him began to change. Kellan adjusted the cuff of his button down as he stepped into the sleek black SUV parked outside the hotel. Kalina was already inside, tapping something into a tablet balanced across her lap. She didn't glance up. "You're late." "2 minutes," he said, settling into the seat beside her. Pax had a dentist appointment. He bit the hygienist. Her eyes lifted briefly. "Does he do that often?" "Only when it smells like bubblegum fluoride. He has standards." A flicker of a grin pulled at her mouth, but she didn't respond. The driver merged into traffic. "Where are we heading?" Kellan asked, buckling in. "To a site inspection. I'm considering acquiring a building in Tribeca for our upcoming expansion. I want your opinion." "My opinion?" He raised an eyebrow. "I'm not exactly a real estate consultant." "I know exactly what you are," Kalina said plainly. "That's why I want your take." He studied her, unsure whether she was serious, but she didn't look up again and the conversation ended there. The building was a wide, aging brick structure wedged between two newer towers. Inside, exposed beams and high ceilings hinted at its potential. Dust still clung to the window panes, and the air smelled faintly of old paint and forgotten inventory. Kalina walked through the space with her arms crossed, heels echoing against the concrete floor. Kellan followed behind her, quietly taking in the space. After a while, she turned to him. "Well, it's got bones," he said. "Character, but it feels cold, not just in temperature." "In spirit," she tilted her head. "Spirit's not a metric. It is when you want people to walk in and stay longer than 5 minutes. If you want this place to work, you'll need warmth. Light. Something that doesn't make people feel like they're trespassing in a storage unit." Kalina nodded slowly. "Interesting. You're actually listening," he asked. "Why wouldn't I?" "Because I'm not one of your architects or your board." "That's exactly why I'm listening," she said. They returned to the SUV in silence, but it wasn't awkward. Kellan rolled down the window slightly, letting the city air filter in. Traffic was slow, and the late afternoon sun had begun casting golden shadows across the skyline. Kalina finally broke the silence. "You ever think about doing more? More than what? More than surviving. More than just getting through the day." He leaned his head back against the seat. "Every day, but wanting doesn't change reality." "Sometimes it does," she said. "If you wanted enough to do something reckless." He turned his head toward her. "You think this job is me being reckless?" "I think it's the first thing you've done for yourself in a long time." Kellan didn't answer. He didn't have to. That evening, he picked up Pax from Mrs. Halley's and took him to the park. The boy ran through piles of leaves, cheeks flushed pink in the cold. As Kellan watched him spin in circles, arms outstretched, he thought about Kalina's words. He used to have dreams. Music school. A tiny studio filled with sunlight and a second-hand piano. He used to believe in more. But dreams required time, and time didn't wait for people like him. Still, something had shifted. The next morning, Kalina called early. "I need you to wear something formal," she said. "We're attending a private reception this evening. It's a closed-circle pitch, 20 investors." "I want you in the room." Kellan hesitated. "Won't that look strange, me being there?" "You're not decoration, Kellan," she said. "You're my second set of instincts." He stared at the receiver in his hand after she hung up. Second set of instincts. The reception was hosted in a penthouse overlooking the park. The crowd was smaller, tighter knit, more guarded. Kalina wore a deep gray tailored suit that made her look more formidable than anyone in the room. Kellan kept close, listening more than speaking. Midway through the night, one of the men Kalina had been speaking with turned to Kellan. "So, what do you do for Miss Zeller?" he asked, swirling a drink in his hand. Kellan's answer was quiet but firm. "I keep her from drowning in yes-men." The man's eyebrows rose. Kalina, beside him, didn't flinch. Later, as they stood by the balcony overlooking the city, Kalina leaned in slightly. "You didn't flinch either." "I figured you didn't bring me here to be wallpaper." She studied him for a moment. "You're not afraid of me." "No," he said simply. "I think you're tired of people who are." Kalina turned away, her voice lower. "You see more than I want you to. Then stop letting me." She didn't answer. That night, the car ride back was quiet again, not empty, just full of things neither of them were ready to say out loud. When they reached the hotel, she didn't move to get out. Instead, she turned slightly. "Have dinner with me tomorrow, not as part of your job." Kellan's pulse kicked. "Is that the reckless part?" "It's the honest part," she said. "I want to get to know you without the contract in between." He didn't answer right away, but then he nodded. "I'll bring dessert." As he stepped out into the cold, something inside him warmed anyway, and for the first time in years, he wasn't bracing for disappointment. He was hoping. The restaurant was perched above the river, a quiet rooftop terrace hidden by frost-dusted hedges and golden lanterns. Kalina had chosen the place without asking if he'd been there before because she already knew he hadn't. It wasn't showy. It was private. And for all her power, she never seemed interested in impressing him with it. "It's not on the menu," she said as the server poured wine, "but the chef makes a fig and goat cheese tart that's better than anything in Paris." "Have you been to Paris?" Kellan asked, unfolding his napkin. "Lived there for 2 years, hated it." "Why?" "Too many mirrors. Everyone's trying to see who's watching them." He leaned forward. "And you prefer being invisible?" "No," she said, her gaze steady. "I just don't like being misread." The candlelight danced between them as they ate. Kellan didn't ask about quarterly reports or mergers. He asked what her favorite book was as a kid. He asked why she never wore color. He asked what made her laugh, and when she said she couldn't remember, he told her about the time Pax had tried to sell lemonade in December and refused to lower the price from $5. Her laugh was soft, but real. "You're good at this," she said, sipping her wine. "At what?" "Making people feel like they don't have to perform." "I don't think you need to perform for anyone. That's because you don't need anything from me." She said it like it was a flaw in his character, like it made him dangerous. "I don't want anything from you," he said. "But that doesn't mean I don't want you." She looked away then. Not out of discomfort, but because she wasn't used to being wanted without terms. When the check came, Kellan reached for it. She stopped him with a glance. "You've been paid to be by my side for weeks. Tonight, I'm paying to be by yours." He didn't argue. They left the restaurant and walked along the river. The cold bit at their coats, but neither brought it up. She paused near the railing, looking out at the water. "I don't let people in," she said quietly. "I build walls, I sharpen corners. It's how I survived." "I don't want to change that," he said, standing beside her. "I just want to be the one person who sees you through the cracks." She turned to him, her voice lower. "If I let you in, you'll see all of it, the damage, the ambition. The pieces I haven't figured out how to fix." "Then I'll see it," he said, "and I'll stay anyway." Kalina reached for his hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The next morning, Kellan knocked on her penthouse door. She opened it barefoot, still in a silk robe with a mug of coffee in her hand. "I brought you something," he said, holding out a small paper bag. She raised an eyebrow. "You brought me breakfast?" "Technically, Pax made it," he insisted. Said you needed to try his cinnamon toast or your life wouldn't be complete. Kalina opened the bag, peered inside, and smiled. It's burnt. He calls it crispy style. It's a creative decision. She stepped aside and let him in. Tell him I loved it. You'll have to tell him yourself, Kellan said. He wants to invite you to his class play next week. She blinked, caught off guard. He does. He made a paper crown and said you should wear it. Kalina sat at the edge of the sofa, holding the toast like it was a fragile artifact. No one's ever invited me to something that didn't involve a speech. Well, this one only involves applause. She was quiet for a long moment. I'll come. He watched her take a bite of the toast, wincing slightly at the crispness, but she didn't complain. Do you ever think about the future? She asked. I used to avoid it, he said. Now I think about it every time Pax laughs. She set the mug down. I've thought about it a lot lately. What it would look like with someone beside me who doesn't want to take anything. I don't want to take, he said. I want to build. She got up and crossed the room. I want something with you, Kellan, not a secret. Not something hidden behind contracts or hotel suites. He stepped forward. Then let's stop hiding. Kalina reached into the drawer of her desk and pulled out a key card. This is for a new apartment, Midtown East, 2 bedrooms. I signed the lease this morning. He blinked. You're moving out of the hotel. I'm building something. I want you and Pax in it. Kellan stared at the key, then at her. Are you asking us to move in with you? I'm asking you to share your life with me, she said. Not behind closed doors, not as a job, as something real. He took the key. You're sure? I've never been more certain. The next week, Kalina sat in a plastic folding chair between 2 retired teachers. The school gym was decorated with cardboard stars and hand-painted signs. Pax wore a crooked crown and gave her a thumbs up before stepping onto the stage. Kellan stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. When Pax finished his line and took a bow, Kalina clapped louder than anyone. Afterward, Pax ran into her arms. Did I do good? You were perfect, she whispered, holding him tightly. They walked home together, the 3 of them, through streets dusted with snow. Kellan carried Pax on his shoulders and Kalina reached up to steady him. They didn't talk about the board meetings or the investors or the empire she ruled. They talked about pancakes and Legos. And which park had the best swings. Because sometimes, everything you needed lived in the spaces between ambition in the quiet moments, the ones you never expected, with the people who saw you completely, and stayed. Kalina paced the edge of the empty apartment, bare feet whispering across the hardwood floor. The movers had just left, the final box shoved into the corner marked for the office. Outside, the city swirled with late winter chill, but the space inside was warm, sunlight pooling through tall windows that overlooked the skyline. I thought you hated Midtown, Kellan said from the doorway. Pax balanced on his hip, a half-eaten cookie in the boy's hand. I used to, Kalina replied, pausing in front of the window. Too many meetings, too many suits, but this place doesn't feel like them. Pax reached toward her. Can I see my room again? Kellan set him down, and the boy dashed down the hall with the energy only sugar could explain. Kalina leaned her head against the glass. I didn't think I'd ever live somewhere that didn't feel like a fortress. Kellan crossed the room, wrapping an arm around her waist. You don't need a fortress anymore. I'm still getting used to that. You're allowed to take your time. She turned toward him, resting her forehead against his chest. It's strange. I've built things my entire life, companies, walls, reputations. And none of them feel as terrifying as unpacking a box labeled kitchen junk with someone who knows how many mugs I actually use. He smiled into her hair. I counted 4, 2 chipped. They're efficient. They spent the rest of the day settling in. Pax claimed his corner of the apartment, setting up his tiny bookshelf and laying out his dinosaur pajamas on the bed without being asked. Kellan unpacked the kitchen while Kalina arranged the living space, her design instincts clashing with his love for function. You can't put the couch there, he said, dragging it slightly to the left. It blocks the view. Exactly, less distraction from the conversation. I thought you liked the skyline. I do. But I like you more. That night, after Pax had fallen asleep beneath a ceiling scattered with glow-in-the-dark stars, Kalina and Kellan sat on the balcony with 2 mugs of tea and a blanket wrapped around their shoulders. The city stretched beneath them, quiet in its own way. You know, she said after a long pause, I used to think love looked like control, predictability, knowing what the other person would do before they did it. And now I think love is letting someone surprise you. And not flinching when they do. Kellan reached for her hand, threading their fingers together. You've surprised me every day, and not once have I wanted to walk away from that. She studied him, her expression softer than he'd ever seen it. You're not afraid of how messy it might get. I've lived through messy. I've raised a child through grief and grocery budgets. I've worked double shifts and fallen asleep standing up. But this, he squeezed her hand. This is the first place that feels like it's mine, too. She leaned in slowly, and their lips met in a kiss that didn't need to prove anything. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was quiet, certain, a promise without words. The next morning, Kalina stood in front of the mirror, pinning a gold brooch to her lapel. Kellan stepped behind her, adjusting the collar of her blouse with a practiced hand. You have that board meeting today, he said. The one about the Zeller tech acquisition. I'm not going, she said, meeting his eyes in the reflection. Why? Because I trust my team, and because Pax has his science fair and he asked if I'd be there first thing. He said he wants to explain his volcano to me personally. Kellan's brows lifted. You're skipping $1 billion meeting for a vinegar explosion. I'm investing in something more important. They arrived at the school just as parents were filing into the gymnasium. Pax stood proudly beside his cardboard volcano, his name scrawled across the base in glitter glue. When he spotted them, he waved both arms. Kalina crouched beside him. Tell me everything. As Pax launched into his explanation, Kellan watched her nod along, ask questions, kneel on the floor in heels without a single complaint. She wasn't performing. There were no cameras, no investors, just a boy and his volcano. Later, as they walked home with Pax asleep on Kellan's shoulder, Kalina slipped her hand into his coat pocket. I used to think power meant being alone at the top. And now I know real power is choosing who you bring with you. Spring arrived with sudden warmth. Kalina started taking morning walks with Pax before school. Kellan began teaching piano lessons part-time at the community center, something he hadn't done since college. They hosted quiet dinners at home, where investors were replaced by neighbors and Pax's favorite teacher. On their first anniversary, Kalina handed Kellan a white envelope over breakfast. What's this? He asked, setting down his coffee. Something overdue. Inside was a certificate, a full scholarship to a music conservatory downtown, not for him, for Pax. He told me he wants to learn cello, she said. I figured we should start early. Kellan's voice caught. You didn't have to. I didn't do it because I had to, she said. I did it because I love him. And I love you. He reached for her, pulling her into a kiss that said everything he didn't yet have words for. The apartment remained filled with laughter, spilled cereal, and late-night project plans. Kalina still ran $1 billion empire. Kellan still taught kids the difference between a G and a C chord. But their lives had merged into something unshakable built not on power or wealth, but on the quiet, daily choice to show up, to stay, to love. And they did. Every day, without hesitation, without walls, together. Always.